In this program, I'm going to be talking about 10 principles. These are principles that I have thought a great deal about. I've given many graduation speeches. I have 8 children. I've spoken to them about various things that I think of as my wisdom being passed on to them. But that's not what these principles are about. These 10 powerful principles are the principles that I believe that each and every one of us can put into practice to create for ourselves the kind of life that we'd really like to live. Most of us want to have a sense of peace in our lives. Most of us would like to be able to feel that they're on purpose in their life. But so often we get tied down with trying to fit in, trying to do things the way other people tell us that we're supposed to do them, trying to be a good person, trying to be successful in a material sense. I think the most important thing any one of us can have is a sense of inner peace, a sense of I am a successful human being and I am living the life that I was destined to live, that I showed up here as a person who's a divine creation with a heroic mission. These principles to me represent the most important and significant things that a human being can gather into their lives. And they're very practical. They're things that we can use and work on each and every day of our lives. These principles have guided my life since I was a young boy, living in foster homes and earning my own way through everything in my life. These principles work, but they only work if you decide you're going to make them work for yourself. They're not about being what other people think you should be. They're about living the life that you are destined to live, about fulfilling your own sense of purpose as a human being. They're principles for inner peace, they're principles for success, but they have nothing to do with the material world. They have to do with looking within and connecting yourself to that great source that keeps all of us living and breathing in a fully functioning way. Thank you. Thank you very kindly. We are here in a very special place. We are in the very church where, on the very setting, where Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson's grandfather, was the minister here when the American Revolution began, and the shot heard round the world was fired just a little ways within walking distance of where we're standing. And it is a very special time for me because in my writing place, which is a very private place, I don't write with a computer. I don't write with a typewriter. I put my left hand on the table and I take my right hand with a ballpoint pen and I have a pad of legal-size paper and I allow whatever comes through to come through my heart and onto the page. And in that writing space, I have had a picture of 2 people on my desk. The 2 people that have been on my desk have been Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was called by many America's teacher, a man who just took the ideas that he felt burning in his breast and talked about them regardless of what others around might have felt or thought. He gave an address at the Harvard School of Divinity and wasn't invited back for 33 years because of the things that he said about how he felt man should become self-reliant and how spirituality ought to serve man rather than frighten him. On the other side of my desk is a picture of a man named Henry David Thoreau. And Thoreau was a man who decided even to go to prison rather than pay his taxes to a government who was doing some things that at that time he considered an abomination. And he went off to Walden Pond to live and wrote in his journal, "Simplify, simplify, simplify," to which Emerson reportedly responded, "I think one simplify would have sufficed." At any rate, these 2 giants, along with Bronson Alcott, who was the father of Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, and so many other powerful books about the rights of a woman to be treated with equality at a time when such things weren't even considered. These were people who took stands on abolition when it was not a easy thing to do. They were stops here along the Underground Railroad to help people, fugitive slaves who were escaping. These people took these kinds of stands and held meetings at the Concord School of Philosophy to discuss an American approach to contributing something that we call now self-reliance, one of Emerson's most famous essays. And I am honored to be here in the same city, on the same site, in a building that has been rebuilt, but where Emerson's grandfather was the minister. So Concord was very accommodating to us to put this program together. And what this program is about is what I call with apologies to David Letterman, my top 10. He does a top 10 every night, and of course they're very amusing. These are my top 10 principles for living a life of success and a life of inner peace. I've been invited many, many times to give graduation addresses, high schools and universities, and I've attended many of them when my own children have graduated, and I've attended at my own graduations at various times in my life. And most of the time, these speeches revolve around certain kinds of themes. One of the themes that they revolve around is success involves working hard and setting goals and listening to your elders and putting aside for the future and all kinds of nose to the grindstone advice about becoming successful later on if you follow these principles. This isn't what this program is about. I have put together what I think are principles that you can live and practice and go to work at each and every day, but these principles don't allow you to become just like everybody else. They're not designed to have you fit in. They're not designed to have you have a life of material success necessarily and defining your success that way, or to feel a sense of inner peace based upon making a connection to something that someone else tells you is what you need to be connected to. These are my principles that I've lived, and it's very difficult for me to tell you to respect your elders and to have other people's opinions be the things that you should use to follow in making your own decisions in life when I've hardly ever done that myself. And I've often said in my talks over the years that any success that I have experienced in my life is really in spite of my education rather than because of it. And it isn't because I am putting down education. I've been an educator all my life and a teacher at all levels, from grade school to junior high school, through high school, professor at several universities, and I have lectured extensively all over the world as a teacher. And I never, ever take this responsibility lightly. But I really believe that inside each and every one of us, we must find our own way of fulfilling and actualizing ourselves as human beings. And no one else out there can direct us or tell us how to do that. It has to be something that comes from within. One of the books that I read when I was very young was handed to me by a man I respected a great deal. And in it was written by Napoleon Hill, and it was called Think and Grow Rich. And it wasn't a book about how to make money and how to get rich. It was really a book that was transformative when I read it at the age of 18, which taught how to have a deeper and a richer experience of life. And that the people who are able to have this deeper and richer experience of life were not necessarily those who did things the way they were told to do things. In fact, what they had that seemed to distinguish them more than anything else from those who didn't achieve a measure of success and inner peace in their lives was something that he called a burning desire. And this burning desire is something that I can identify with very, very strongly. I am just turned 61 years old. And at the age of 61, I can honestly say to you that I have never really in my life experienced something called scarcity. I grew up in a series of foster homes, and my life was not one of having things handed to me. I've had to earn whatever I've had to earn along the way, and I've done everything from drive delivery trucks and work as a cashier. I used to, as a doctoral student, ring out the groceries of my students that I was teaching, and take their bags out and hope that my students would give me a tip. I mean, I've been out there working, all right, all my life. But one thing that I've known and I've experienced and I remember from looking at the lives of people who have been able to establish themselves as successful, if you will, is that they have this thing called a burning desire. And a burning desire is not like any other desire. I mean, all of us have desires. I mean, if you want to eat your dinner, you have to have a desire to go get the food, or move from one room to another, or put the food onto a plate and heat it up, or whatever. Desire just comes with being human, living in a human body. A burning desire is something very different. A burning desire is like having an inner candle flame that never flickers. Though the worst goes before you, this thing can't be put out. No one out there can ever tell you, you can't do this, or you can't have this. In fact, when other people do tell you can't have it or you can't do it, all it does is, for those who have that burning desire, is reinforce that this is something I am going to be able to accomplish. And I will use your skepticism and I will use the doubt that you provide to motivate me even further. And I've always felt that in my life, that even when I lived in a home where there were a group of children, I was the one that always had a little bit of money jingling in my pockets, because I would sleep with the snow shovel at night when it would snow. And I'd wake myself up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I would take that snow shovel out and I would shovel the snow of all of the houses in the neighborhood without even asking anybody if they'd like it shoveled. And then I'd go back and knock on the door, and I was cute. I was a cute little kid. I had this blonde hair. I know that's hard to imagine. I've sent it all away now. And I would just stand there and say, I shoveled your snow for you. And sometimes I would get a nickel or a dime. I even got a quarter on a couple of occasions. That doesn't sound like much, but that was 1946, 47. That's equivalent to $6,000 in today's money, all right? And I can remember the other kids always saying, Wayne is the one that had money jingling in his pocket. And it wasn't because I had any special abilities that the others didn't have. It was because I had this thing called a burning desire to be able to have within me whatever I needed to be able to purchase the things that I wanted. And that burning desire has been something I've had with me, and it's why I put a program together just like this. Because I believe so strongly in the message of public television. I believe so strongly in the idea that we have a spiritual deficit in this country, and that we don't have an information deficit. There's plenty of that. But there's a deficit of spirit, a deficit that says there's not enough of us that feel connected to the highest and the greatest part of ourselves. And these top 10 principles that I have put together here for this program, you might want to jot down. You might want to go into your desk and just take out a little piece of paper. But I think if you practice them and look at them and see them, they come from someone who's had a burning desire, but has also been living a life in which I have felt independent of the opinions of others in terms of whether or not I should or shouldn't be doing that. There's something that I allow to consult myself, within myself, rather than looking outside to see if this is right or not. And so let me just I'll number them and I'll go through them and I'll give you some examples of them. and you decide whether they're to your liking or whether they work or not. The first of these principles came from a Vedantic scholar in the 10th century. His name was Tilopa. It's not exactly bestseller books, but it's the kind of thing that really excites me because I think of going back 1,000 years or 2,000 years and reading what some of the greatest minds had to say and how open they were to the potentiality that each and every one of us have for greatness. And this first principle says, as Tilopa put it, have a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing. One of the central principles of my life is that no one knows enough to be a pessimist about anything. And that each and every one of us, when we close our mind to what is possible for us or what is possible for humanity, closes off the genius that resides and lives in each and every one of us. Having an open mind doesn't necessarily mean finding fault with all of the things that you've been taught by others. It means opening yourself up to the potentiality and the possibility that anything and everything is possible. So having a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing really means finding within ourselves the ability to get rid of a trait that I find so common in the contemporary world. Do you know that most people that I meet spend their lives looking for occasions to be offended? They actually are out there hoping that they can find some reason to be offended. And there's no shortage of reasons. They're out there everywhere. The way this person dressed, what this person said, they turn on their TV, they hear the news, they're offended by this. Someone used language that they didn't like, someone doesn't share the same customs that you, and people all day long. In fact, if you keep track tomorrow, you will find probably 100 reasons that you can go around being offended. But a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing is a mind that says, I'm never looking for anything to be offended by. And that whatever anybody else out there has to say, my response to that is, that's an interesting point of view. I've never considered that before. I remember being interviewed for a morning television show, and the woman that was interviewing me said, how does it feel to be talking to audiences where people have all of these strange beliefs, these weird things that they come to? And it intrigues me because one of the things that Emerson said is in one of his very first essays. He says the first thing we have to say respecting what are called new views here in New England, where we are right now, is that they are not new, but the very oldest of thoughts cast into the mold of these new times. And that was in 1842. He was speaking about that. And this woman asked me the question. She said, doesn't it offend you that there's people out there and they're talking about people using crystals to heal somebody? And I remember my response. My response was that if I've got hemorrhoids and somebody out there is convincing me that crystals are going to heal them, I'm ordering crystal chairs. Why not? I mean, all you have to do is understand something called a placebo. And what is a placebo? It's nothing more than a convincing belief. If I hand you this pill and say this pill is going to cure your arthritis, and you take it and the pill is just a sugar pill, but your arthritis disappears, I'm into buying those placebos. Where can I get some of those placebos? And it's true of everything. And it's when you think about all the things that we enjoy and what our life is like, it took people who had a mind that wasn't closed to allow us to make the progress that we've made. Progress is impossible if you always do things the way you've always done things. But the other word in this, what Tilopa said, is be attached nowhere. Be attached nowhere. Attachment really means I am deluding myself into a belief that if I can't have or if I can't do this or that thing, then somehow I am going to become immobilized. So an open mind that is detached. In my most recent book, in A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, I have an observation. And it's an observation from Anthony DeMello, a man I respect enormously, a priest, who, in The Way to Love, puts it this way. Here's a great test for your relationships, especially the relationships that you're in with those whom you love, not your children, but your spouses and your lovers and so on. Try this test on for size. 1, I am not really attached to you at all. I am merely deluding myself into the belief that without you, I will not be happy. And 2, and here's the toughest test for non-attachment. I leave you free to be yourself, to think your thoughts, indulge your tastes, follow your inclinations, behave in ways that you decide are to your liking. How's that for a challenge? And so what most of us do in our relationships and why they are not as successful as we would like them to be is that we become attached and we tell ourselves that if this person behaves in a way that I find offensive, then I can't be happy. I make my happiness, my fulfillment dependent upon those people that I love being what I think that they should be. And detachment doesn't mean being a victim. It just simply means I know that I can make my life fulfilled and happy by having a mind that is open to everything and attached nowhere. The second principle is a very simple principle. It says you can't give away what you don't have. Now, it sounds ridiculous, okay? But it's more than what meets the ear as you hear this. You can't give away what you don't have. People who are not good at giving away love can't give away love because they don't have it to give away. If I want to give you a dozen oranges, I can't give you those dozen oranges unless I go out and pick up 12 oranges someplace. Otherwise, all it is just empty rhetoric. And the same thing is true of virtually everything in your life. You can't give away love for others if you don't have love in here to give away. If what you have in here is contempt, if what you have in here is anger, if what you have in here is fear, then these are the things you're going to be giving away in your life. And I've often thought, and I really believe very strongly that there's a law in the universe. I call it the law of attraction. And the law of attraction is one that works like this. You get back from the universe, from the world, what it is that you put out there in the world. And if you're putting out there into the world that I am not worthy of attracting something beautiful into my life, that the universe will respond back to you with exactly that message. And there are people who come to me and who came to me for years when I had my own counseling practice and so on, and they would say to me, I just keep attracting the same kind of people, the same kind of events, the same kind of losers into my life. Why is that? Why do I keep doing that? And I keep attracting an absence of abundance. I just can't seem to attract abundance into my life. I'm always behind the 8 ball. I'm never getting ahead. And I suggested to them, I said, did it ever occur to you that that's the very kind of message you're sending out to the world and out to the universe? That the ocean of abundance is there. And you can go to that ocean of abundance and you can take a Mack truck and you can fill it up 20 times a day and take it out of there, and guess what? It doesn't impact at all the ocean of abundance. It doesn't even go down a zillionth of an inch. It's unlimited. Or you can go to the same ocean of abundance with a eyedropper. And you can just take this much out once a month and say, that's all that seems to be available for me. And the interesting thing for me is that when people go to this ocean of abundance, this unlimited world, all that I have is thine, it says in the holy books. All that I have is thine. It's all there for you. But if you believe inside that it's limited, that you can only get so much, that other people are going to get it before you do, then you'll find yourself creating that very same thing. And the even more interesting part about this, you can't give away what you don't have principle, is that if your message to the universe is gimme, 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 which is a lot of people's message to the universe. I want this from you, I want that from you, please give me this, I have to have that. That's what their prayer is like, that's what their message is, and they say, I want this from the universe, gimme, gimme, gimme. The universe's response back to that kind of a mentality is exactly the same. The universe will say right back to you over and over again, gimme, gimme, gimme. And you'll find yourself never, ever arriving, but always being in a state of striving, always feeling as if you're being neglected, never feeling as if you have enough, always feeling as if you're being shortchanged, because you're constantly under the pressure to give, to get back what the universe is demanding from you. And the interesting thing about all of this, the irony of this, is that if you shift that and you say to the universe, to the world, how may I serve? How may I serve? The universe's response back to you is, how may I serve you? How may I serve you? And it's very intriguing. When you take your energy and your attention off of what you are demanding from the world, and instead saying, what can I give to the world? And it's really the basis behind that very famous line of the President John Kennedy's inaugural address. Ask not what your country can do. Ask what you can do for your country. And the irony of that is, and I've learned that in my own life, that when I stopped thinking about what was in it for Wayne Dyer and how much could I get, and I began to shift and say, how can I help you? How can I give to you? What can I do for you? And people who write to me, I send them something. When I encounter somebody that needs help of some kind, I'm very often just giving that to them. And then I find that it just keeps coming back into my life. And once I shifted that energy off of what can I have into what can I give, it seemed to me that the universe responded back with the very same message. What can I give to you? And the most incredible and wonderful and beautiful abundance has flowed into my life in every way that I can possibly think of. You can't give away what you don't have. So take a look at an inventory of what you do have. How much do you love yourself? How much kindness do you have in you? How much peace do you have in you? How much joy do you have in you? And if you're able to give that away as many times as you can in a given day, watch and see how much more of that continues to show up and come back in your life. Okay? The third principle is one of my very favorites. It's called, there are no justified resentments. And this is a very difficult principle for many people to get, but one that I believe very strongly in. I was in a group one time of drug addicts and alcoholics. And I was one of the people that was a sponsor and leading this group. And the sign on the wall said, there are no justified resentments in this group. And what I said to that group that night was, what a great lesson in that. The idea that you take, there's a rule, it's called the 80-20 rule. And in the 80-20 rule, it says, everything that you have, all of your stuff, 20% of it is what you use. All of your clothes in your closet, 20%. You just keep using the same 20% over and over. 80% of the clothing that you have in your closet, for so many people, is something that you never use, you don't wear. You look at it, you store it, you think, well, there might come a day, I can't part with that, even though you've
been carting it around. Every time you move it and you put it. Take the 80% that you don't use, says Lao Tzu, and give it away. Give it away. Lao Tzu said that when your cup is full, stop pouring. When your cup is full, stop pouring. We have an obesity crisis in the United States, in the Western world. The obesity crisis can be handled if you just read the Tao. If you realize, in verse 33, it says, if you realize you have enough, you are truly rich. If you could just learn something called portion control, where you just take a bite and you say, is my cup full? Stop pouring. Stop pouring. In other words, instead of filling yourself with that which is already a surplus, in the Tao it teaches us to take surpluses and to reduce them, and to take deficiencies and increase them, so that we create balance in our lives, to be in balance. You can take the jewelry that you don't use. You can take the clothing, and then once you've given away the 80% that you don't use, take one of the things that you really like and practice giving that away. It's such a wonderful way. Listen to this poem. It was written by a great Persian poet named Hafiz. It says, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Just look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. It lights up the whole sky. There's no owing. There's no owing. You don't have to be, you can practice living a state of contentment. This was so powerful for me. You just can't imagine how good it felt for one entire year to walk through every day and say, I'm content. I'm content. I start out every morning of my life. The first words, Hafiz says, if there's only one prayer that you say every day, make it thank you. Just say thank you. That's how I start. Wake up, thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you, Source. Thank you, Tao. Whatever you want to call. The opening line of the Tao says, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. As soon as you put a name on it, it dissolves. There's no name for it. It's just endlessly, invisibly, constantly in a state of creating out of a state of love. I asked if I could have water on the stage. They did it. They figured it out. There's Now, I'm going to try to get some of this water, okay? So you get down here and you just, I'm going to just scoop this up. And okay, now tighter you hold it, the less chance you have of doing anything with it, isn't it? How can I experience water? The way to experience water is to just get soft. Just get unbending. And there it is. That's what water is. The minute I grasp it, the minute I try. And Lao Tzu is saying the same thing is true in everything in your life. The more you grasp, the more you try to hold on to it, the more you try to be rigid with it, the less control you have of it. The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish.
In reading the Seth material, Jane Roberts said that we are awake at the wrong time and asleep at the wrong time. That the best time to be awake is between 3 and 6 a.m., wherever you are. And that, she said, virtually every single one of you, and I'd like to put you to this test, every one of you will receive a wake-up call from God between 3 and 6 a.m. You will wake up for a moment, note the time, and then listen to your ego and go back to sleep. Or maybe get up if you got a prostate problem and get right back into bed and say, well, it's 3:30. I don't get up at 3:30 in the morning. Only a fool would do that, you see. And that the best time to be asleep is between 3 and 6 in the afternoon. And that between 3 and 6 in the morning is when the world is silent. And you will, and I've learned this after 6-7 months of doing this, I've learned that I am the most clear in these hours. And I have begun to have this awareness after 6 months now of being up in these hours that I am losing the paradigm that I was stuck in. And the paradigm that I was stuck in says, if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be very tired for the rest of the day. And I've only had, let me see how fit I am and how good I feel. Where's my watch? Where's the clock? I've got to find out, well, let's see, I went to bed at 11, 4 hours. It's going to be a deficit of 4 hours, so I'm going to be sleepy all the rest of the day, and then I'm not going to get this done, and tonight we've got to go here, and I'm going to be sleepy then. I'm going back to sleep. There was an ancient Sufi poet. His name was Rumi. And Rumi had, in one of his poems, he said, do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. So what I have done, and what my teacher said to me, he said, you will find this difficult at first, because your ego will be telling you all the reasons why this is absurd. So what you do is you wake up and you put your feet on the floor. And then if you want to go back to sleep, sleep with your feet on the floor. Which I have done on a few occasions. But not for very long. And the ironic thing about all of this is that I now, when I go to sleep, it doesn't make any difference what time it is. I can't wait for 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to arrive and to get out there and be, and no matter what the temperature is or what city I'm in or where I am, I can't wait for that. And I have eradicated fear from my consciousness. It's just like knowing that I'm protected and that I'm fine and that it's going to be all right. And so I would just throw that out to you. There are probably people in the room here who get up in those hours, not to go to work, but often to meditate or to write or to do their music or to create whatever it is that you're creating or to think through whatever. This is a very, very spiritual time of the day. It is the most spiritual time of the day. It is the time when you have more silence. And as Melville said, silence is God's one and only voice. And you will begin to make a direct sort of communication with the higher part of yourself if you can remove so many of the distractions.
The sacred or the divine part of you wants something very different than this ego part of you. There really are two of us in each and every one of us. One, of course, is the ego. And this ego is just an idea. You'll never find it in an autopsy. It's not anything you'll ever experience in the physical world. It's just an idea. And this idea says that who I am is special and important. And who I am is separate. Mostly who I am is separate from. And who I am is absorbed in my self-importance. And who I am is insane. Because insanity is defined as believing that you're something that you're not. And this idea that we carry around of our separateness, it says over and over again that where I leave off is where you begin. And my separateness keeps me without any awareness of my connection to you or to God or to all of the rest of the environment. It's the separation that this idea has. And it is what keeps you in a state of turmoil in your life. It's not bad, it's not evil, it's not wrong. It's just the idea that somehow the tribe has taught you, and you have taken on this idea that somehow you and the rest of us and God are separate identities. And then there's another part of you, and this is the sacred part of you. And this sacred part of you, what I call the sacred self, what some call the higher self, only wants one thing. It only wants you to be at peace. It doesn't care if you're right or if you're wrong, if you're good or you're bad, if you get a lot or you get little, how much you have, who you're better than, who you defeat, how old you are, how young you are, what color you are, what sex you are. It is not interested in any of that. That's all the work of the ego, the idea of your separateness and your individualism. This part of you, this sacred higher part of you, only wants you to be at peace. My teacher said very clearly
very clearly, directly to me, very clearly. Nisargadatta Maharaj, 15 years ago, very clear. Enlightenment is being immersed in and surrounded by peace in your life. Enlightened people, the people that you meet that are truly at that enlightened state, are people who are able to express peace, immersed in it, send it out, receive it back, at all moments in their life. And when someone asks, they've asked me, well, what's the difference between these highly enlightened people and the rest of us? Is it that they have unconditional love and we don't? I say, no, that's not the difference. We have unconditional love. They have unconditional love. We have that. The difference is that they don't have anything else. That's all they have. So that if you're on a cross being crucified and someone throws a spear into you, out of you comes what's inside. All I have inside is forgiveness, is love. That's all I have. In A Course in Miracles, there's this wonderful affirmation. If you don't get anything else today, get this one down, all right? It says, in this moment, it says, I can choose peace instead of this. I can choose peace instead of this. What a great reminder. You're just ready to explode, and you stop yourself and say, I can choose peace instead of this. So there are essentially two paradigms that I need to talk about. I've talked about before at some of the seminars I've done here. I've written about in Your Sacred Self. But in order to be able to understand manifesting, to be able to manifest, you are really understanding this idea that the person in your life who is able to push the buttons that sends you into a frenzy. Somebody else could push the same button and you react with love. But that person pushes that button and off you go. And your ego instantly enters into it and you need to make them wrong. This could be your spouse, this can be an ex-spouse, this can be a lover, this can be one of your children, this can be a mother-in-law, this can be anybody. It can even be a stranger. And they push that button, and you go into a frenzy. What is happening in this moment is that this is a divine master who has showed up in your life that you should be kneeling down and paying homage to and saying, thank you, God, for sending this divine teacher into my life. I know your ego is really having a tough time with that. But what is happening in this moment is, here is someone who is teaching you in this moment that you have not mastered yourself yet. That's what they teach you in this moment. And that is your soulmate. That is the person that you need to be able to send love from a peaceful inner expression that says, I could choose peace instead of this. And when you are in a relationship with that person, and they push the button, and you are able to be at peace, truly at peace, not acting. Now these great spiritual teachers come disguised as manipulative, cunning SOBs very often. And there's only a few of them in the whole planet. But they move around a lot. Right? And they got a lot of disguises. But until and the test for you to be able to do this is very, very simple. It's a very simple test. Something you can work on when you leave here today. You can work on it the minute that you walk out of here with that one that won't flush. Who keeps coming back. When you have the choice to be right or to be kind, you pick kind. You pick kind. The higher part of you says, be at peace. When you're at peace, you react with kindness. The ego says, be right. It's much more important to be right. Why do you think I subtitled this book, Making the Decision to Be Free? You are only free when you lose your self-absorption, your sense of separation from those that send you into those frenzies, and your sense of separation from God. Because God is that divine organizing intelligence that is in all things, including this person who is pushing these buttons and keeps showing up.
If one of us is suffering any place on this planet, then a part of all of us is. The only difference between all one and alone is just one L. A good example of that is watching my mother with my grandmother. My wonderful grandmother, who was almost 96 years old, was dying, and my mother was taking care of her. And she would go in there with a banana, and she would pull the peel down, and she would mush the banana up in her hands or in her mouth like a mother does to her baby, and she would feed it to her mother, and she would cradle her in her arms. And she would take her underwear, which when you get very old and you're getting close to the end of your life, you kind of forget about your hygiene habits. She was always extremely clean, but toward the end of her life, she just lost interest in that. And my mother would take her clothes, her soiled clothes and underwear, and wash them and help her put them back on again. And she would hold her in her arms and put food into her mouth and massage her neck to make the food go down. And I looked at her, and my mother was 68, I believe, at the time, and my grandmother was 95. And I looked at them and said, who is mother and who is child? Which one is which? And wasn't it just an instant ago in time, if there is such a thing, wasn't it just that much time ago that it was reversed? That the one who was now the baby was the mother holding the other one and putting bananas into her mouth and cleaning her underwear and changing her diapers and all of that. And it really brought home the essence of we are all one. And time is just sort of our way of defining what happens in sequence in life. But it doesn't have any meaning. I mean, there's really no time in the world. There's only just the world the way it is. And each of us must accept that if any one of us have any suffering going on, then all of us are a part of that. And that's our responsibility. See, you can't get this transformation that I'm talking about in 1 year or 10 years. The wonderful Chinese proverb said that if you want to think a year ahead, sow a seed. If you want to think 10 years ahead, plant a tree. And if you think 100 years ahead or more, educate the people. Once we educate the people and raise a few generations of people who won't be soldiers and who won't kill and who do love and who do see all of us as one and who understand that a person in Japan who is unemployed as an auto worker is just as much of a human problem as a person in Detroit, even though our proximity dictates that we are more compassionate toward the person in Detroit. That's just because we can't think globally. We're only thinking locally. And that it's still any human being who's unemployed is a problem for all of us. And any child who is starving because they're in Africa, a continent and an ocean away, doesn't mean it any less affects all of us.
A lot of people operate under the assumption that I give my love to people who deserve it, and that's a mistake, isn't it?
Everyone deserves it. Everyone. Gandhi said, hate the sin, love the sinner. And that's a very important line, very important philosophical approach to life. Hate the sin, love the sinner. The things that people do are things that we can help them to correct and to change and within ourselves and other people and so on. And we can teach them and help them to grow to not be destructive. But everybody deserves our love. And until we start thinking that way, we're going to always have dichotomies. We're going to always have you versus me, us versus them. And as long as there's that usness and me-ness and you-ness, there will never be all of us together. See, what we need to do is all go up in a spaceship and look down at the earth and see this fragile little planet that we live on, and that we are all one on this planet, and that we must all recognize that instead of looking for all the things that separate us, instead of building more weapons to destroy us, we must begin looking for ways that we can all get along. And as hokey as it sounds, if we don't do it, we won't survive it as a species, or it'll be left to generations, billions of years from now, who can evolve past the Holocaust that we'll create. To learn the essential messages of all great religious leaders, all great spiritual people, all great philosophers, that we are love, and that we are the essence of what makes this whole thing work is all within us. And the truth won't be revealed to any of us until we recognize that we're a part of that truth. We're all a part of it, and we're all one.